Medical societies that I had trusted, for 10 years was also pushing this. And I thought, if they're lying about this, what else are they lying about, and why are they lying about it?
Woe when everyone speaks well of you. Cheap grace is what Dietrich Bonhoeffer called it. There's a war raging for the hearts and souls of your kids. And you have to be shrewd as serpents, gentle as doves. You have to see it. You need to learn to spot it for what it is. God's given you authority. Use it. This way, your faith is deeply personal, but it cannot be private. It is the normal position of men and women who love God stand against injustice. My hope is in no government or political system. My hope is in Jesus Christ.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Under God podcast. Today, I'm very excited to share with you a talk that my wife, Dr. Kyla Martin, recently did at a great church called Legacy Church. She was speaking to over 2,200 women all about health and wellness. I'm very excited about what God's doing really in her life, but also in the medical community as a whole. Kyla recently started a direct primary care practice. She left the big machine of medicine and she's getting right back to the patients. For those of you who may not know what direct primary care is, Google it. It is a powerful alternative to the limited access that many of us have. I don't know about you, but when I go to schedule a primary care appointment or something that I need, it's usually weeks, if not months, just to get in. With direct primary care, you have direct access for a low monthly fee to your physician anytime that you need them. 80% of all medical care can happen and probably should happen in a primary care setting where you know your doctor, you can ask questions, and more importantly, they share your Christian faith. I tell people in our church all the time, do not trust people who do not love God. That doesn't mean that you can't learn from them. That doesn't mean you can't eat the hay and spit out the sticks, but it's always better if you can align every area of your life, especially your medical care, with people who love God and share biblical values. If you want more information about Good Steward, about the patients that Kyla is actually right now accepting patients in Texas and New Mexico, you can find out more about direct primary care. You can also sign up for a free initial consultation with her to be able to learn how you can get healthier. Especially as we round out this year, go into the new year, it's going to be a major focus. You can visit her website at goodsteward.health. That is goodsteward.health today. I really believe you're going to learn a ton from what she had to say at the Aspire Women's Conference. Take a look.
Well, good morning. Again, my name is Kyla Martin, and it is such an honor to be here with y'all today. We've known Pastor Steve and Pastor Cynthia for many years now, and they're just incredibly important to us. They've really poured into us, and Pastor Steve is like a father to me, so I'm comfortable and at home being here. Pastor Steve is our pastor, and he's on our church board. And he has not only stood up for what's right, but he has been a major role model for many pastors and leaders to teach them to be courageous and to stand strong. So can we just give it up for your pastors right now? And if you don't have a church home, you need to be here on Sunday. This is an incredible church spiritual family. Please come back. So again, it's an incredible honor and privilege to be here with you today. I'm going to start off with a little bit of background about me. I grew up in church, in Tulsa at Church on the Move, and I've always been around church. If their doors were open, we were there, and we were there serving. At the age of 11, God told me that I was going to be in medicine and that I was going to be a married pastor. And I did meet my husband, Stephen, there, and we pastored a vintage church in the Central Texas area. And it was about 4 years after we got married that we ended up moving to Denver for me to attend medical school there. And at the time, we were so young and poor that we didn't have the ability to get a student loan or anything like that. And so we asked my parents to co-sign, and they said no, which surprised me. And so I decided I was going to threaten them. I said, well, the Army's going to give me a scholarship. Your baby girl's going to get deployed, but they'll pay for my medical school. And they said, that's a great idea. And so ended up joining the Army, and that's what moved us to Central Texas area now near Fort Hood, the largest military base in the world. And so that's where our church is now. And so we moved there in 2013. That's when I started my residency in family medicine, and also at the time that we planted Vintage Church. And at the time, it felt like I was really leading almost two separate lives between trying to be in medicine and the church was going on, and then me and my husband just felt like we were kind of going two different ways. Working 80 plus hours a week, I didn't even get to be at church every weekend or anything like that, which was really hard. But we found out later God obviously had a much bigger plan for us. About 80% of our church is actually active military, and so that's what helps us bring them in, and so it's been pretty incredible. It was in 2020 that I got out of the Army and joined a local hospital to take care of hospitalized patients. And that's really when everything kind of started to change for me. That's when I really started to question everything. When COVID happened and we knew fairly early on that it was an airborne disease, which meant the only thing that kind of protect against it would be a specialized N95 mask, not just, these cloth things that they were pushing on us. And we knew this, and the medical societies that I had trusted, for 10 years was also pushing this. And I thought, if they're lying about this, what else are they lying about, and why are they lying about it? And then it was about a year and a half, 2 years ago now, we were here, and Sandy Culkin was here, and he prayed for us. And he told me these words. He said, you're going to be on a collision course of change over the next few months. And man, was he more than I could even imagine, just one thing after another that just snowballed into something that I want to talk with y'all about today, because it made such an impact on me and my family's life that I just want to share it with anybody who will listen. So I imagine this is going to be pretty different to something that you're probably used to hearing at a women's conference or even in church. Again, I'm not a pastor, I'm not a public speaker, but I'm a pastor's wife and I'm a doctor. So. And now 25 years later, I'm finally seeing why God called me to do what I thought was two completely separate things, because our health is all over the Bible. Our ability to share and serve the message of Jesus is deeply connected to our own health and our well-being, because how can we reach people if we can't even take care of ourselves to be able to reach them? In 1 Corinthians 6:19, he says, do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own, you are bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. He cares about all of us, spirit, soul, and body. He made it clear that whatever we put into our bodies, we are to take care of them, and he cares about that. Because again, if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of others and reach them for Jesus. So did you know that this is the first time that our life expectancies are getting shorter, despite all the medical and technological advances that we have, the access that we have? Our country, we are more depressed, more anxious, more diseased, and more medicated. We are clearly doing something wrong. And this didn't start overnight. It really started around the 1950s. First, that's when they started developing some convenient and fast foods, and then you'll see a pretty significant uptake in the 80s and 90s. And if you remember, that's about the time that we learned that cigarettes were bad for us. And instead of declaring bankruptcy, these cigarette companies actually shifted gears and purchased food companies like Kraft, General Foods, Nabisco. And they took those scientists who were developing these addictive products and they shifted them to food. And that's the processed food that we have today that's full of so many chemicals, fats, sugars, oils, all of these different fillers is creating this processed food that they estimate now about 70% of what we eat is processed. And that really, it hijacks our biology intentionally to suppress your ability to even sense that you're full so that you're having cravings and that you continue to eat it. It weakens our immune system, causing disease, depression, and anxiety. Today, it's estimated that 75% of Americans are overweight or obese. That's 3 out of 4. Unfortunately, our kids aren't doing much better. 1 in 3 kids are overweight or obese, and they're headed for the same trajectory that we are with chronic disease if we don't do something about it soon. Maybe you've been told that it's about genetics or whatever, but interestingly, this is only new over the past 80 years or so. In genetics, it's not going to change that quickly. There was a study that they did a while back where they took twins who grew up in 2 completely different homes, and they found, shockingly, that their health, any disease processes that they developed, their weight, everything was only determined by 10% of their genetics. They found that 90% of their health had nothing to do with it, but it was based on their environment, toxins, pesticides, pollution, even how much they exercised or slept, all of that has such a bigger impact on their risk for disease, which is actually great news because that means we can actually do something. We have that choice. We just have to know what that right choice is. Unfortunately, doctors have done a terrible job at this, and many of us weren't even taught about it. In medical school, they estimate we spend about 200 hours learning pharmacology, the study of disease and the drugs that we can use to treat them, the side effects and what they're useful for. On average, medical schools spend, at best, 10 to 15 hours on nutrition. We were taught to treat disease with medication that has side effects that is going to create more disease and more medication, but not a focus on preventative health. Again, to be clear, I'm not against medication. It can be life-saving when it's necessary, but you have to know that the benefits outweigh the risks. They estimate that about 1 in 4 people are on a medication called a statin, a very common cholesterol medication that, again, can be life-saving and preventing heart attack, strokes, and things like that. But it also has a 1 in 300 chance of causing diabetes, which is also going to increase that risk. Again, I'm not against it. I'm not saying stop it if you're on it. You just need to know that these things also have risks that can outweigh the benefits. And there are alternatives that we can take before starting with that. They estimate that more than 50% of women are unhappy with their weight. Tried to do countless things with temporary or discouraging results. It's overwhelming. But how are you supposed to know who to trust? How many of you remember the Weight Watchers or Jenny Craig diet? Low carb, low fat. I think now there's keto and paleo, heart healthy, the diabetic diet. There's so many different diets. Not even doctors and dietitians can't even agree on the best diet. Or what if you have heart disease and diabetes? You have these 2 different ones to choose from. It's not supposed to be that hard, right? God actually made it much more simple for us. If you think back to the Garden of Eden, what would have been in there? Just whole, unprocessed food. He made it that simple for us. I want you to think about what would have been in the Garden of Eden. So what I want to talk to you about first is just more general health that's good not just for you, but for our families, husbands, and children. And then I want to focus and zero in more and make it personal to women's health at the end as well. I took care of a man in the hospital back in around May or June, and I don't even remember what we diagnosed him with, but he had diabetes that was so severe that I had no choice but to start him on insulin. It was the only safe thing to do. And he looked at me and he said, I can't do this for the rest of my life. I cannot be on insulin. Please tell me what I need to do to get off of this. And I spent about an hour with him, kind of going over some things. That hour that I did not get paid for, I get paid if I prescribe the medicine, not if I actually try to prevent disease. And that was back in, again, a couple months ago. And 2 weeks ago, he found me at church. He didn't go to our church, but his granddaughter was getting baptized. He found me and he told me, I am off insulin. I have lost weight. I have never felt this good in my life. So I want you to think about it this way. Food can be a toxin or food can be medicine. It's our choice. So we'll start with a nutrition facts label. I think will be the easiest way to kind of go through and explain some things. And I want you to understand first that it's really about the quality, and then if we understand the quality of our food, then we can really understand the impact that it has on our health and on our hormones. So first, you want to focus on food that doesn't even have a label. Think what would be in the produce section, fruits, vegetables, and things like that. And then we can start looking at the ingredient list, make sure that you actually recognize what's in that ingredient list. Generally speaking, the shorter the list, the probably better that it is for you. But starting at the top with fat, there's really 3 different types, and they're very, very different. So a low-fat diet is actually not that helpful. The unsaturated fats are actually healthy fats that our bodies can't produce ourselves, so we need it. They have an impact on our help us absorb vitamins, reduce inflammation, they're antioxidants. Some examples of these would be natural whole foods like nuts, seeds, avocados, fish. Saturated food, however, is one that our body makes all that it needs. It's involved in energy and hormone production, but having too much from our diet can cause inflammation, raise cholesterol and estrogen levels that we'll talk about later, can even interfere with insulin and reduce your body's ability to sense your own insulin, so you produce more insulin, which creates diabetes, and it causes weight gain. Some of the most common sources of this is going to be red meat, dairy, and oils. The worst oils are palm and coconut oil, have the highest saturated fat content of any of them. The better ones are going to be extra virgin olive oil if you're cooking less than about 350 degrees, which is about its smoke point. When that oil starts smoking, that smoke it's a carcinogen. It's something that as you inhale, it actually increases your risk for cancer. That's why that smoke point is so important. So anything over 350 degrees, you want to be using like avocado oil. You can also get away with not even using oil if you use a little bit of water or even broth if you're using like a skillet or something, and just have to add a little bit at a time because you'll otherwise end up steaming it. And then the last fat is trans fat. It was originally used to help improve shelf life, make food last longer, and to be cheaper. They have now declared it unsafe for human consumption, and it was banned a few years ago. It's still occasionally in meat and dairy and oil naturally, but it's otherwise reduced quite a bit. And so again, you can see why a low-fat diet is not that helpful. Moving on to carbohydrates, there's 3 types: fiber, sugar, and starch. Fiber, we tend to think of it as just a stool softener, but that's like the smallest part of what it actually does. Fiber is probably the most important thing that you can be taking in for your body. It helps boost our healthy gut bacteria to help absorb nutrients, vitamins, prevent toxins from coming in. It even binds cholesterol and estrogen to actually get it out of our body. It improves our metabolism so that you feel fuller longer. You end up eating fewer calories, and it helps with weight loss. It improves our immune system, reduces inflammation even in the brain to help prevent dementia. Fiber is really important. It's only found in plant foods. It's not found in meat. So lentils, beans, seeds, and nuts. The average person gets around 15 grams of fiber, and we really want to aim for closer to 40, 50. There's really no limit, but 80 years ago or so, the average was about 40 grams. If you're going to increase your fiber, though, you just want to be a little bit cautious about it, no more than about 5 grams per week to get your system kind of used to it, because it can cause some irritation. But again, fiber is the most important thing that you can be focusing on when you're looking at the nutrition label. And also why just low carb is not so straightforward, because fiber is a carbohydrate, so you want to remove that from that count. So then there's natural versus processed or added sugars. Natural sugars, the kind that you're going to find in Whole Foods, they help to absorb, they have vitamins, they have minerals, antioxidants to protect against inflammation and oxidative stress. You can start with the Dirty Dozen list. Is helpful in terms of looking at pesticides that could be on it. Organic typically means that it has fewer pesticides, and it typically also has more vitamins, and these are the ones that you're going to want to buy organic on, and then you can also wash to help get some of that out. All the chemicals and things that you can buy over the counter to try to clean fruit, and they've shown that it's really no more effective than water, because it's not what you're using, it's actually the act of cleaning it. And so there's really 2 easy, cheap ways to do it. The way that we do it at home is you take 1 teaspoon of baking soda to every 2 cups of water. And so I have a giant bowl that I fill up with like 16 cups of water, and so 8 teaspoons of baking soda. And we just put fruit in there one at a time and let it sit for about 10 minutes, scrub it, and then put in the next one. And that's been the easiest thing for us. As the kids are bringing in the groceries, we're just switching it out every 10 minutes or so. Another option is half vinegar or half water. That just costs a little bit more, and then it might not taste so great if you can't get all of it off. Added sugars, though, are completely different. They activate a part of our brain that is the same as drugs and alcohol. It's a pleasure center involved in dopamine. It activates the same center, which is why we can get addicted, and we can actually have withdrawal symptoms similar to drugs, like cravings, headaches, and irritability. And children are even more so at increased risk for this behavior, and they think it actually contributes to increased risk for addictive behavior later on in life too. And so one way to help with that is to manage with healthier sugars, like fruit. And it takes about 2 to 3 weeks to kind of detox, if you will, from sugar after the withdrawal process. When I did this about 1.5 years ago, I used to be my favorite thing was a king-size Reese's. I could easily eat that. And now my kids know that I like Reese's, and they'll bring it to me. I can only tolerate 1 bite. I can't eat anymore because it's so sweet, and you'll be shocked how much your taste buds change and how much more you can actually experience the taste of everything. Unfortunately, artificial sweeteners are not even a better option for trying to replace sugar. They can change our healthy gut bacteria. They increase cholesterol, toxins that cause inflammation. They simulate the taste receptors, but then we don't get the calories that come with it. And so on average, if you use an artificial sweetener, you end up eating 3 times more sugar in the following 24 hours than you would otherwise. Some common examples are aspartame and sucralose. And so moving on to starch, see a picture of the glycemic load there. Some common examples of that are bread, pasta, rice, potatoes. Starch is broken down into a sugar, so it's a slower process, so it has a delayed effect on increasing your blood sugar and will make your blood sugar stay higher for a longer period of time. And actually, starch can have a bigger impact on your blood sugar than sugar does. A bagel is actually going to raise your blood sugar more than a donut will. I'm not saying choose a donut, but... So grains are a pretty high source of starches. Think whole versus refined. So some common whole grains are brown rice, quinoa, whole wheat. And these also tend to involve fiber and vitamins, minerals, and they also slow down digestion. So again, you feel fuller and longer, and you end up eating less calories. Refined grains are processed. They have the bran and the germ removed, and so they have fewer calories, or they have more calories, less fiber, and then you end up feeling hungrier sooner. Gluten-free is kind of the big thing right now too, and it's a little bit tricky. So if you have a gluten insensitivity, then you absolutely need to try to be gluten-free, but that's less than 1% of the population. Gluten-free is not necessarily healthier because they typically have to add fillers and sugar and cornstarch and potato starch to try to copy the texture. And so if you don't have a gluten sensitivity, don't look for gluten-free. It's often used as a marketing ploy though, so things like brown rice naturally doesn't come with gluten, so you can see it's gluten-free. Like, no kidding, that's how they make it. It's nothing different. So that's good. But if you're looking for something that generally has gluten and it says gluten-free, just go with the one that has gluten if you don't have a problem with it. It's actually going to be healthier for you. Moving on to protein, we only need about 1/3 of our weight in protein every day. A few of the people that need higher, so children, pregnant women, athletes, and elderly need about 2/3 of their body weight. The vast majority of people get about 2 times the amount of protein that they need. Healthy sources are going to be plants, and again, have fiber, plant foods, so produce, fruits and vegetables, nuts, whole grains, seeds. Too much protein can strain your kidneys, it can cause dehydration, and if you don't use it, your body will store it as fat. So high protein diet can actually increase your weight. Also, protein tends to be more associated with meat, which is going to have a higher saturated fat content, causing inflammation, as well as glycation end products, which increase our risk for cancers. So with meat, you want to look for organic, pasture-raised, that's going to have less saturated fat, less hormones, less pesticides, and less of those glycation end products and things that can increase your risk for cancers. We actually use a online delivery service called Farm Box Delivery in Texas that actually can source within Texas, and it brings us the meat that is unprocessed and organic. So you can probably find something like that online. For fish is a good source as well. You just have to be careful because it tends to be contaminated with toxins from the water, and so you really want to limit it to no more than about 3 times a week. For children, probably closer to only about once a week because they're still developing and it can go into their brains. And then eggs are a good source as well. They just have a higher content of cholesterol, so you want to be careful with that because meat, dairy, eggs, and oils, these all have a higher calorie density, which means more calories with smaller portions. Whole food, I think it's a different slide. Whole food has fewer calories with more food, so you actually end up getting to eat more while eating less calories. So putting it all together, the general idea is you want about half of your food to be produce, like fruits and vegetables, about 1/4 to be nuts and seeds and whole grains, and then 1/4 of protein. You want to be able to tell where your food came from. I don't know if you guys have my slides. Moving on to exercise, we all know that it's important, but we very rarely make it a priority. Yes, the goal is 150 minutes a week. I'm never going to hit 150 minutes a week. I'm not telling you necessarily need to do that, but every little bit that you can do does help. Even just a 10-minute workout can increase concentration, attention, emotional regulation, helps with our memory and our speed of processing, even our ability to sleep better. It can lower anxiety, blood pressure, blood sugar. And you don't necessarily have to go outside and go to the gym. Just whatever you enjoy doing, swimming, biking. I talked to my husband and taking dance lessons with me. There's so many other things that you can do that you actually enjoy doing. You may, if you have any kind of disease, heart disease, lung disease, anything like that, you may be asking, when is it safe? Is it safe for me to exercise? Do I need to go get cleared by a doctor? The better question is it safe for you not to exercise? Unless you have active disease, heart disease, where you're having chest pain or getting short of breath with any kind of activity, it's better to get started and not wait for that. Otherwise, you can do cardiac rehab or talk to your doctor if you have active, untreated disease. And then moving on to sleep. Sleep is also just as important, but it's often stigmatized. We often tend to think of people who get better sleep as being lazy. I remember in residency, I was 37 weeks pregnant, and I did a 96-hour shift, and I was very proud of that. We made fun of the residents who couldn't handle anything like that. But have you ever thought, why did God create us to sleep for a third of our lives? On average, the average adult gets about 6.5 hours of sleep. Teenagers only get about 7. And you can see here more so what it should be. 72% of parents, when they were polled to ask, 72% of parents said they believe that their teenager gets enough sleep when only 10% actually do. A recent survey showed that 80% of teens admit to checking their phone in the middle of the night, checking for messages on their social media. 80%. We have got to get their phones out of their rooms, get them off of social media. I could go down a completely different path with that. It is a huge problem. In Psalm 127:2, he says, "It is useless for you to work so hard from early morning until late at night, anxiously working for food to eat, for God gives rest to his loved ones." He gives rest. Sleep is a gift from God. Again, a third of our lives, he designed us to be sleeping. Helps us to be more restored and efficient. They did another study where they took piano players and they gave them a difficult piece that they needed to learn. Half of them, they allowed them to work and play into the night practicing, and the other half, they made them go to bed and get 8 hours of sleep. In the morning, the ones who got the extra sleep and didn't spend time practicing were much better able to play that piece than the ones who spent much more time. So practice doesn't always make perfect. Sleep also helps us consolidate memories, retain and recall information, and integrate new knowledge. I work at a hospital right now, and we can round on patients, and then as soon as we're done, we're able to leave. And by making just this simple change, I've been leaving the hospital 2 hours earlier. Like, that's how much of an impact it can have because of the efficiency and impact on your memory. It also helps with our immune system, reduce the risk for infections, inflammation, even cancer. They've shown that night shift workers have an increased risk for cancer because of the impact on their sleep. Sleep is also when our body removes amyloid, which is that protein that increases your risk for dementia. It also affects sexual health and fertility by disrupting our hormones. Poor sleep heightens fear, depression, and anxiety. In Proverbs 3:24, he says, "When you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be restored." This really speaks to his omniscience. This was incredible to me when I read it. We now know 2,000 years later that he says, when you lie down, that's when our fear is processed and managed. Think about it. Have you ever been sleep deprived and you feel more emotional, more overwhelmed, maybe more paranoid? Now imagine going days, weeks, months, years of losing your ability to process fear and emotions. We are starting to realize that mental health might actually start with poor sleep issues, not the other way around. 80% of people who struggle with anxiety, depression, different things like that, start with having poor sleep before it ever develops into that. And I was trained if someone comes in having poor sleep, to screen them for depression and get them on medication, or put them on a sedative. About 10% of women are on sedatives, and they can actually be really dangerous. They are the equivalent of a chemical baseball bat to the head. You're unconscious, but you're not getting adequate sleep. They also affect your sleep phases and increase your risk for cancer even. Unfortunately, when you try to get off of them, you can actually withdraw and not be able to sleep, which makes you think that the sedative was working, but it's not true. You just take a week or two to kind of reset your body. It's estimated that about 15% of doctor's appointments are for poor sleep. So about 50% of people who have difficulty sleeping can actually improve it or resolve it completely with just making some of these lifestyle changes and discipline alone, which can then have a significant impact on mental health. I have some sleep tips I want to go over with y'all. First is that the bedroom is for sleep and sex only. Not for watching TV, get the TV out of the room. Not for reading, not for working, not for laying in bed trying to fall asleep. Sleeping. So if you're laying in bed for more than 20 minutes and you haven't fallen asleep, get out of bed, get out of your room, go read and do something, and then try again. You have to retrain your brain that that's all that it's for. Next, you want to avoid light for at least 2 hours before bed, particularly TV and your phone, your computer that has blue light in it. Now, they have blue light filters that help to reduce that, but there is still light that's coming in, and light suppresses our body's ability to secrete melatonin, the hormone that helps us sleep. Next is no clocks, no visible clocks. So no clock that you can see, not your phone. Don't wake up in the middle of the night and check the time, because what are you doing? Think, oh, I only got 4 hours of sleep. If I fall asleep now, I get maybe 2 hours. And then you're doing math and you're expecting to fall back asleep. It's not gonna happen. So again, for the adults, also get your phones out of the room. You also want to keep your bedroom and your core body temperature cold. The best temperature is supposed to be around 65, 66 degrees. I bet many of your husbands would be really happy to hear that. Eating food within about 2 hours, drinking alcohol 2 hours before bed can actually increase your core body temperature and also make it more difficult to fall asleep. Next, we want to exercise, just again, more than 2 hours before bed. Exercise, so as we go throughout the day, our body builds up a chemical called adenosine. And that adenosine is a sleep pressure, and so as we go throughout the day and it builds up, that's what helps our ability to fall asleep. So if we exercise, we can actually build up more adenosine, and so it helps us sleep later on. What's interesting is caffeine, like coffee, it blocks the receptor or our body's ability to sense the adenosine. So it's still there, it's still building up, but we're blocking it. And that's why when that caffeine wears off, you get that crash, because all of that adenosine is still there, you're just instantly aware of it again. And so it's really important to try to move your caffeine earlier in the day as well, because it has about a 12-hour half-life. So if you have coffee at 8 a.m., 8 p.m., you're still gonna have about half of it in your system. Next, you don't want to, again, have any food before bed, and get at least 2 to 3 hours before bed, because when you eat, your body needs to send blood flow to your intestines to start digesting, so your body can't even fully fall asleep. And then finally, you want to go to bed within about an hour of the same time every single night. It's part of that retraining of your brain to get back into that routine of falling asleep. Again, God created us to sleep for a third of our lives. It's that 8-hour period. Sleeping in on weekends is a sign of not sleeping well during the week. And I know that can be a lot harder, but if you're doing anything more than an hour, you're essentially giving yourself jet lag every single week. You notice that despite our focus on your feelings, your truth is your truth, all the therapists that we have, all these medications that we have, it's not getting better. There's depression, self-harm, suicide, shootings, these things are all on the rise. In Proverbs 14:12, it warns us, there is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. Now, don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying therapy isn't needed or necessary in some circumstances, but by repeatedly talking about and reliving negative experiences, we're only amplifying emotional stress and depression. Then we end up placing blame on others for our situation, and we don't take responsibility for ourselves, and then you can't make any change. We need to focus on the positive, get around spiritual family, like in this church, join a dream team, get involved and look outside of yourself, and you'll be amazed how much of an impact that it can have. If you remember the DARE campaign back in school where there was this huge focus on trying to reduce drugs, talk about role playing with how you say no to drugs, it ended up failing because they focused so much on the problem and the negative that they actually saw an increase in the use of drug use because of the DARE campaign. In Philippians 4:8, it says, whatever is true, noble, right, whatever is pure, lovely, admirable. If anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Because he knows that thinking about these is not our default. Our default is to dwell on the negative and focus and elevate that. We have to choose, and we can, because our feelings aren't facts. We can change our feelings. God says in 2 Corinthians 10:5, take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. Again, look outward, positive, be with each other. This is an incredible church, an incredible community. Again, if you are not in a church, get plugged in here. If you're struggling with something, the answer is in this room. Get around spiritual family. In Hebrews 10:24, it says, and let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. My husband says it this way. He has our serve team members that come in, and everyone has problems. Everyone has things that they're struggling with, and you can end up wearing it on your face and impacting people that you're seeing. And he says, just come in, take anything that you're struggling with, and you put it in a box, and you set it to the side. You can worry about it when you're done, but right now we are serving others. And I tell you, every single time he says that, they come back and say, you know, that problem wasn't as big as I thought it was. Or I found the answer in church. Again, you have the power to control your thoughts. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 9:27, I discipline my body and make it my slave. He tells us we have to choose this, not to follow our feelings. Again, feelings aren't facts. We have the power to change. Often we try to blame a lot of these symptoms and problems on hormone levels. Hormones are probably the number one thing I get asked about from women. And it has an impact on our everyday life, right? The cycle, fertility, even your weight and mood. And when it's in balance, everything is going smoothly. When it's not, you get things like PCOS, fibroids, endometriosis. All of these hormones, estrogen, progesterone, they all work together to help regulate the menstrual cycle, help with fertility. And if we can understand how to better regulate our hormones, then we can often prevent and treat a lot of these problems. The first thing that you should know is that our hormones vary significantly depending on the time of day or where you're even at in your cycle. Before jumping to hormones, you need to know the side effects and know there's other options, but also realize that maybe you don't necessarily need to be tested in the first place. Oftentimes, if we just make some of the changes that we've already talked about, you'll actually see a significant impact with that because it's often not even our hormones. With all of the nutrition changes that I've talked about, you can start seeing an improvement in a lot of these problems, energy, sleep, focus, memory, in just 2 to 3 weeks. Just small adjustments to routine can have a big impact. But most women's health problems involve the same hormones. So they all have fairly similar treatments. Several of them often direct estrogen. It's usually too high of an estrogen problem. Saturated fat increases in our diet, actually increases estrogen in our bodies. Body weight increases estrogen. Exercise and fiber can help reduce it. Because again, a lot of these have a problem with too much estrogen in our system. One thing to be aware of is something called EDCs, or endocrine disrupting chemicals. These are in our environment everywhere, and they interfere with our hormones. They're causing kids to hit puberty years and years earlier than they used to. It's probably contributing to some of even just this initial gender dysphoria symptoms that kids are struggling with when they're younger. It can reduce testosterone and fertility problems with men. It affects your thyroid. It can cause you to develop an autoimmune disease where your body actually attacks your own thyroid. It can mimic estrogen, slow metabolism, and cause weight gain. It can even cross into our brain, affecting neurotransmitters, affecting critical thinking, depression, anxiety, even ADHD in children. Again, it's all over our environment. So where is it? The number one place is plastics. They are unfortunately in everything. They're in our water supply. They're in the plastic water bottles that we drink. Our food containers that we're putting our leftovers in when we think we're eating healthier and we microwave the plastic. Plastic wrap on produce when you're searching at the grocery store. It's also testosterone in water, and a mimicker of testosterone, which also affects men. It's a lot of our water filters that we have in the refrigerator or faucet, most of these don't get rid of a lot of these plastics either. You really want a filter that's either like activated carbon or reverse osmosis. We use a Berkey filter. They're a little expensive, but you've got to get the number one thing that you can do to try to help treat all these women's health problems that we're going to talk about is getting rid of plastics. And so just start small. Get rid of the plastic water bottle and get one of the stainless steel. Get rid of some of the food containers and switch it out for glass. It doesn't have to be everything at once. That would get really expensive, but even small changes at a time can start having an impact. The second most common is pesticides. Pesticides are being sprayed on all of our food. The main sources are going to be non-organic produce in that Dirty Dozen list, and also in our water supply. They affect our thyroid and sex hormones. They activate estrogen receptors and increase the risk for breast cancer. Again, this is why girls are hitting puberty 5-6 years earlier than they used to. The best thing to do is to, again, try to get organic if you can in that Dirty Dozen list. You don't have to necessarily worry about any of the ones that are not in there. And then washing can help remove a significant amount of it. And then finally, our personal care products have parabens, phthalates, BPA, all of these different substances that are in our lotions, shampoo bottles, cosmetics, deodorants, perfumes, all of these different things that have these chemicals. And many of them are starting to catch on and put the labels that they don't have it in there. But there's a couple of apps that you can use, like Think Dirty and some different ones, where you can look and see if those products have it on there and start making some changes. Because again, all of these have a significant impact, not only on us and our estrogen levels, but also think about the effect of estrogen on children or on your husband. And then again, testosterone as well. What I hope that you've noticed so far is that we can have everything that we've talked about can have everything in our environment can have a significant impact on our health, from the food that we eat, the water we drink, the products that we're putting on our skin. The good news is if you can change those things and give it at least 3 months, you can see such a significant impact on anything that you might be struggling with that hopefully you'll never even have to come see me and get on any kind of medication or anything like that. PCOS, or polycystic ovarian syndrome, affects about 1 in 10 women. It's the most common cause of infertility, causes irregular cycles, usually infrequent, which is what causes the infertility. Abnormal hair growth, acne, difficulty losing weight, and again, getting pregnant. It's a complicated combination of having excess weight, which causes, again, insulin resistance. So your body has to make more insulin, which can increase the risk for diabetes and also causes weight gain. And then that weight gain, again, increases the estrogen. It's this vicious cycle that can be very hard to break through. Some things, the most important thing, the most helpful thing you can do for PCOS is weight loss. And I imagine if you have that, you've heard that 100 times. Because having PCOS makes it significantly harder to lose weight in the first place. Again, a lot of these things that we're talking about, if you can start making some slow, simple changes, I think you'll start seeing some improvement. Reducing the estrogen or the endocrine disrupting chemicals, changing water, trying to reduce your stress by, again, getting in spiritual family and being around people. And then some of the more traditional, if those don't work and you've tried some things for at least 3 months, some alternatives might end up being like birth control pills and hormones. But again, these have side effects. They can cause weight gain, they can cause low libido and other problems like that. And so you really want to try these natural things first, because most of the time they're going to work. Next, endometriosis also affects about 1 in 10 women. And that's when you have uterine tissue that is outside of the body, whether it be in the ovaries or somewhere in the pelvis. But because it's uterine tissue, it also responds to your cycle, meaning you get inflammation and significant pain. It can even cause pain with periods or sex both. Treatment, again, is exercise, weight loss, reducing estrogen exposure, trying to increase fiber. Some other things, red meat and alcohol specifically increase the risk for endometriosis, as well as fibroids. Fibroids affect about 1 in 10 women as well. Only about half of them are symptomatic, though. These are benign tumors. We don't really know what causes them, but we know that estrogen stimulates their growth. And so again, we're trying to reduce estrogen in our diets and our environment can have a pretty big impact. Also, red meat and alcohol have a significant impact and increase the risk for both fibroids and endometriosis. Some other things that you can do if you end up seeing a doctor for it would end up being maybe like Motrin, naproxen, birth control, hormones, even surgery. Again, if we can avoid those things, we absolutely want to, and a lot of these things that we've talked about can really help with that. Infertility, we've kind of already talked about. PCOS is the most common cause, again, for infertility. So losing weight, reducing estrogen, all of these things, they're different things, but they're all treated and affected by the same thing. And so it's really easy to just say, all you have to do is these things are going to help improve all of your women's health problems, hormones, and things like that. Menopause hits around the average age of 51, and this is when you've gone at least 12 months without having a period. Usually, though, it precedes with hot flashes many years before and many years after. It tends to be the most common symptom. But it can also cause night sweats, sleep and mood changes, and vaginal dryness. On average, symptoms last maybe 4 years, but the hot flashes tend to last quite a bit longer. There's hormones and bioidentical hormones and different things that you can use, but these, again, also have side effects. They're generally safer if you start them within about 5 years of menopause and before the age of 60. If you've been on them for more than about 5 years, that's when you start getting the increased risk for cancers and blood clots and things like that. One of the most helpful things, so hot flashes tend to be the most common symptom, and believe it or not, soy is one of the best things that you can do to help reduce hot flashes. You may have heard, like I did when I was younger, that soy was this big, bad estrogen-producing thing and we needed to avoid it. That was actually based on a study in the 1950s on rats. We're not rats. We have different receptors and different things like that. And so it's actually a phytoestrogen. It's a completely different type of estrogen that's actually a good one that helps reduce risk for cancer and so many different things. You can get soy from tofu and edamame and different things like that. Soy nuts are really good. Also, reducing caffeine and alcohol tends to help menopause as well. And then what I really want to talk about now is low sex drive. I know that this can be kind of a sensitive subject, and this is intended for the married women in the room, and helpful if maybe you're hoping to get engaged or married soon. But this is probably the most important thing that I want to talk with you about today. 1 in 3 women struggle with having a low libido, and 1 in 4 divorces cite lack of intimacy in their marriage as being a cause for divorce. So this is really important. But given how high those statistics are, chances are you have friends that are struggling with the same thing. So again, get around spiritual family, talk about these things. They can really help you. Many chronic diseases can increase the risk for having a lower libido. The hormone imbalances can suppress sexual desire, that cause vaginal dryness, and even cause pain. Diabetes, thyroid disease, cancer, obesity, heart disease, autoimmune disease, depression, anxiety, all of these things can affect our hormones and then increase this. Most antidepressants also suppress sex drive. There is a medication called Wellbutrin or bupropion that you'll often get put on if you're on an antidepressant because it can help. It can even help if you're not on an antidepressant. It would help improve sex drive. Again, if we can try to make some of these other changes, hopefully we can avoid medication at all. The majority of our medications that we prescribe can also cause low libido. Like our antidepressants that are supposed to make us feel better, more happy, can actually suppress your sex drive. As well as birth control pills can, steroids, even allergy medicine, cholesterol medicine, nausea medicine like Zofran, all of these things can suppress sex drive. So everything up to this point, I think you should notice or start to realize that if we can correct a lot of these diseases, if we can reverse disease, get off of medication and improve it, we can have an improvement in every aspect of our lives. And usually you can start seeing change again within about 3 months or so. I want to specifically talk about pain with sex. About 20% of women struggle with this, and about half of women who have trouble with low libido is due to pain with intercourse. Most of the problem is actually due, about 80% of cases are due to just not having adequate lubrication or dilation. Yes, I'm going to go there. It can take at least 30 minutes of foreplay for your body to even be somewhat prepared for this and have what you need. And most of the time, it's still not going to be enough. There's many different lubricants and things like out there that you can get. The best one, the one that I recommend is one called Uberlube. It's silicone-based, which means it doesn't dry out, it doesn't absorb. You can take a picture if you dare, or you can type in the code. I really recommend it. And hey, I even brought free samples for y'all if you want to come to my booth. And yes, I got permission to talk about this. But that's how seriously incredibly important that this is. So come see me afterward at my booth. Low libido can also be very spiritual. Think about the fall of man, Adam and Eve. Our disobedience has consequences. In Genesis 3:16, it says, "And you will desire to control your husband, but he will rule over you." This is a consequence of sin. Look around our world. The feminist movement, we were never meant to compete with our husbands, but to complement them. I'm running out of time. Paul told the church in 1 Corinthians 7:3, the husband should fulfill his wife's sexual needs. I'm going to say that again. The husband should fulfill his wife's sexual needs, and the wife should fulfill her husband's needs. We give authority over our body to our husband, and the husband gives authority over his body to his wife. Do not deprive each other of sexual relations unless you both agree to refrain from sexual intimacy for a limited time, so you can give yourselves more completely to prayer. Afterward, you should come together again so that Satan won't be able to tempt you because of your lack of self-control. Satan is attacking, and he's attacking hard right now. He's attacking the church, and he's attacking family. And so he is low libido, low sex drive, not having sex with your husband. Like, this is a real problem, and this is how Satan is trying to get in and attack families. This is why the church doesn't have any better divorce rates than the world. We've really got to understand that this is a spiritual attack, and you can take a stance. You can take action. You can learn to initiate and engage. Again, your feelings aren't facts. You just have to try. Your actions can drive your feelings. You can also, again, decrease those endocrine disrupting chemicals can help. Get some Uberlube. Even put it on the calendar. I would actually encourage you, as crazy, silly as it sounds, schedule it. Because that way at least you can expect and prepare for it too. Most of the time it is a women problem, but about 15% of men struggle with low sex drive or low testosterone levels. And interestingly enough, it's the same treatments we've been talking about that can help them as well, reducing these chemicals, making these dietary changes and things like that, because the most common cause of low testosterone in men is going to be weight. It can also help, they can use resistance training tends to help with testosterone levels as well, and getting diseases under control and getting off of medications too. So each of these common hormonal imbalances can have a significant impact on our everyday life, and they really require a nuanced, personalized approach to your treatment. One that addresses the whole you, not just your symptoms, because you're not just a case or a number, but you have your own values and things and goals that should be considered, and you should be involved in that treatment decision. On top of that, your health is highly spiritual, and your doctor should share your same values. As my husband says, don't trust people who don't trust God. So I am so passionate about this that I have actually created a clinic called Good Steward Health. I am in Texas, but I love this church so much that I got my license here in New Mexico as well. Which was not easy, by the way. Apparently, y'all are the most litigious state in the country, and malpractice is very hard to get. But Good Steward Health is a primary care clinic that's going to be built on biblical truth, combining personalized care with comprehensive care. Unlike traditional, again, where you're seen as just a case, you're seen as your unique situations and your values and your goals are all tailored to you. Your voice matters and is the most important. So we set goals and we make treatments together. Direct primary care is a new up-and-coming way to do medicine that doesn't involve insurance, which means no hassles, no prior authorizations, no getting approval to repeat your yearly labs more than once a year. It's just a monthly subscription fee, about $100 a month, where you have unlimited access. You can call me, text me, email me. I can get in touch with you the same day or next day pretty quickly. Also have reduced rates. I've worked with some of the local imaging imaging and lab centers around here to get significantly reduced costs. Most of the time, the self-pay cost that I can get is going to be cheaper even than your copay, so with insurance. So I'm going to be seeing people who have insurance or who don't. Again, it's just an easy once-a-month fee, no hidden fees, no copays, none of that. And I can be happy to be your primary care doctor, help you with lifestyle medicine, or just be a second opinion. But I will be able to have more time and attention for you because most primary care clinics have around 3,000 patients per doctor, and direct primary care, if you know anything about it, tends to cap at around 600 patients. So you have a lot more time and attention that you need. And so my calling is to the church. I'm keeping this within the church because that's my calling to you. My call is to help you and your families to get healthier and reverse disease and have a say in your own health and take back control of your health. And so there's even a QR code if you want to sign up or if you want to come see me at the booth. I'm happy to talk with you more about it, answer any questions. But if you're here now, I am also waiving the enrollment fee if you would like to join. So come see me and ask questions if you have any. Good. All right. Well, let's pray. Lord, I thank you for these amazing women that are here today. I thank you for the opportunity to speak with them, to share your word and your design and vision for our health and our bodies. I pray that each of them walk out of here with the confidence to take a step and make a change closer to you and your plan for them. I thank you for not only being the God of the big world, but also such a personal God that you care for each one of us and what we struggle with. And you love us too much to leave us there, and you'll take us higher. In your name I pray, amen.
Thank you so much for joining us today on the Under God podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like and leave us a review. Your support helps us reach more people with our content. You can stay connected with us on True Social, Facebook, Instagram, and Getter. And don't forget to subscribe on Rumble, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify so you never miss an episode. You can also access show notes and other resources on our website at undergodpodcast.com. See you next time, and remember to think biblically about the things that matter most.